Welcome or welcome back to our role-based webinar series, which we have been hosting throughout 2022 and since the fall of 2021. Today, we will focus on the role of school administrators in school safety efforts, which includes security, emergency management, and preparedness activities. My name is Janelle Hughes, and I serve as Project Director here at the Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools Technical Assistance Center, also known as the REMCA Center. As with each of our webinars in this series and beyond, there are a few tips for engaging with the platform and with us throughout the event. We have placed relevant online resources in the web links pod. Please explore those web pages and feel free to share them with your colleagues as well. You are also welcome to pose any questions in the Q&A pod or communicate any technical difficulties that you may experience. We will be answering questions following the presentation and as time permits. We will also host a live web chat via our community of practice directly following this event. We will send a link to access that chat as well. After the live event, if you have any questions and you're not able to join our web chat, please do not hesitate to send us an email to our help desk at info@remcacenter.org. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available in archived form on our site within 7 business days after the live event. I am so happy to introduce our guest speakers for today. Elizabeth Brown is the co-facilitator of the Principal Recovery Network through the National Association of Secondary School Principals. She has been in education for 31 years, recently retiring from the Marion County Public Schools in Marion County, Florida, and now serving as principal at Ocala Charter High School. She served as the principal at Forest High School in Marion County for 4 years and was chosen to lead the school community in the aftermath of an active shooter incident on campus. On April 20th, 2018, a former student opened fire in the school building, seriously injuring other students before his firearm jammed, ending the attack. In the 4 years she served as principal at Forest High School, she worked collaboratively with the school stakeholders to really rebuild the school culture. We are also joined by Michael Sedlak, who started teaching at Hescat Middle School in Bedford City School District in Bedford, Ohio, where he taught 8th grade reading. He then moved to Leavitt Middle School in Clark County in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he taught 6th and 7th grade English, worked with the Curriculum and Development Department, and was a dean of students. Michael returned to Ohio to begin his career as an administrator, taking the position of assistant principal at Chardon High School in Ohio, a post he held for 3 years. During that time, a student opened fire in the cafeteria and took the lives of 3 students and wounded 3 others. Michael then served as assistant principal at Hudson Middle School in the Hudson City School District in Ohio for 2 years, and as a principal at Eastwood Intermediate School for 6 years, and he is currently a unit principal at Hudson High School. Michael is a founding member of the NEST Principal Recovery Network and is committed to collaborating with others to improve safety in our schools. Thank you so much, Michael and Elizabeth, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at our agenda. First, we'll provide a brief overview of the importance of collaborative planning in school emergency operations plan development. Then our guest presenters will provide a closer look at the role that school administrators can play in school safety. The REMCA Center will then discuss how school administrators can help enhance the 6-step planning process outlined in the Federal Guide for Developing High-Quality School Emergency Operations Plans. As we mentioned before, a Q&A session will follow. We welcome your questions, and we will end with some key resources to support your work. We will also, again, be hosting a 30-minute web chat via our community of practice immediately following this event to answer any remaining or additional questions. Log in or register for the community of practice now and get ready to chat online using the web links pod. So let's get started with our first poll question. Let us know, had you heard of the REMCA Center before today's session? And if so, in what context? Perhaps you attended a live training in person at your site or a virtual training such as a webinar or a virtual training by request, or you've requested technical assistance via our help desk, downloaded a resource, met us at a national conference, or in another way. It looks like we have a great mix today and that many of you have attended our virtual engagement opportunities, such as webinars like this one, and you've also downloaded a resource. We have uploaded quite a few recently released fact sheets on topics that are great for not only school administrators, but other faculty and staff within the school building. So we encourage you to download those web links again and to share them with your partners. Thank you so much for your participation, and we are really looking forward to both sharing and learning from our partners today. If this is your first time meeting us, thank you everyone for taking the poll. The U.S. Department of Education's Office of Safe and Supportive Schools administers the REMCA Center to help build the preparedness capacity, including prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery efforts of schools, school districts, and institutions of higher education in collaboration with their community partners at the local, state, and federal levels. REMCA Center staff members are available via email or phone to respond to your request for technical assistance on emergency operations plan development. So thank you to those of you who responded that you've requested technical assistance. Thanks for participating in that poll. Next slide. Families and communities expect schools and school districts to keep children and youth safe from threats, including crime and violence, as well as hazards like natural disasters, disease outbreaks, and hazardous materials spills. In collaboration with their community partners, schools and school districts can plan for these potential threats and hazards through the creation of an emergency operations plan, also known as the school EOP. The school EOP describes how people, not just students, but also teachers, administrators, staff, and visitors, as well as property, will be protected on and off campus. It also details who is responsible for carrying out specific actions before, during, and after an emergency. It helps identify the personnel, equipment, facilities, supplies, and other resources available. And of course, outlines how all those actions will be coordinated. While school EOPs vary in their contents as they are customized according to the school building, they generally contain three main sections. The basic plan, which provides an overview of the school's approach to emergency operations, such as training, exercises, and information collection and sharing. Also, the functional annexes section, which presents how the school will manage common essential functions like evacuation, communications and warning, accounting for all people, family reunification, etc., before, during, and after an emergency. And then, of course, the threat and hazard specific annexes section identifies protocols schools will follow to address these specific emergencies, such as active shooter incidents, unfortunately, hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, food contamination, power outages, and so much more. School EOP should be developed by school-level emergency planning and response team with membership from the district's core planning team. And the formation of this multidisciplinary planning team is really step one in the 6-step planning process that is outlined in the Guide for Developing High-Quality EOPs. This guide may be used by the core planning team to create new plans as well as revise or update existing plans. And you can access at-a-glance versions of those guides from the web links or download the PDFs from the REMCA Center website. And why collaborate? Because the planning and development of a school EOP requires the expertise of a diverse group of people so that it reflects the diverse needs of the school community. Everyone has experience to contribute. Transportation directors, teachers, school facilities managers, IT specialists, nurses, psychologists, families and parents, and of course school administrators and so many others, which is why we are here today. K-12 administrators, such as district superintendents, school principals, unit principals, assistant principals, must support and engage in emergency management planning in order to develop and implement and maintain comprehensive school EOPs. The guides really note this foundational planning principle. Engaging school administrators is crucial because their involvement is essential to elevating emergency management to a high priority at every school system level, both administrative, department, and school building. Administrator engagement can also lead to greater involvement of teachers and other school-based staff members in preparedness efforts. So school district and school-based administrators' actions in advance of incidents are critical to the success of emergency management efforts at all levels of the school community. And we're showing you on the screen just some examples of the roles that school administrators might play before, during, and after an emergency. And we'll hear today from both Elizabeth and Michael about some of the other roles that they will play. At this time, we're going to segue into our poll, and we want to hear about the role that you play in school safety, security, emergency management, and preparedness. So if you could take a moment, respond to our poll, and let us know about the role that you play within your school, school district, locality, your state, whatever the case, in supporting the development or implementation of school EOPs and or other safety efforts. And it looks like a great deal of you support EOP development, which we are also happy to hear, and always happy to hear, rather, as well as incident response, training and exercises, all very important roles. I see recovery here as well. It's so important to, again, have that multidisciplinary team as you are looking to not only create, but to enhance and revise your existing emergency operations plan. So we really appreciate you participating in the poll to give us a sense of who is joining us from the field. Remember, do not hesitate to pose your questions to us via the Q&A pod throughout the event. At this time, I am going to turn things over to our partners, Elizabeth and Michael, who will help us in taking a closer look at the roles that school administrators can play in school safety by providing some of their experiences. Thank you so much, Michael and Elizabeth.
Hi, welcome, and we appreciate you coming today. So again, like Janelle spoke in our introduction, I was assistant principal at Chardon High School on February 27, 2012, where first thing in the morning, a student was waiting for a bus to an alternative school, shot 6 students, murdering 3 of them, injuring 2, and 1 is paralyzed. Then the student ran out of the building, and from that moment on, it was, post this incident and recovery for the Chardon school and community.
And I'm Elizabeth Brown, formerly the principal at Forest High School in Marion County, Florida. That's in North Central Florida. I was brought into the school 45 days after an active shooter event. A former student, disgruntled student, left his home the morning of April 20th, which is also the anniversary of the Columbine shooting, entered an upstairs hallway, went into our restroom, changed into tactical gear, and had 2 different weapons on him, opened fire shooting through a classroom door and severely injuring 1 student, and then the gun that he was using jammed, and the second gun that he had brought, he had actually, I believe, had the wrong ammunition for. And so that ended the attack. I came in fairly closely to the end of the school year. I was on campus for the first time June 1st. And so from that point forward, I spent the next 4 years leading the school through the healing process and recovery process, as well as an international pandemic.
So as we go through these 6 steps, we're going to talk a little bit about each one of them and kind of give you some of the things that we've learned or the best practices that we've implemented since then. So Elizabeth and I are going to hop back and forth and do that. Certainly, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We do want to make this as interactive as possible, and I do tend to talk a lot, so I'll try to stick with my notes because this is such an important topic to discuss. You're also going to notice that each of the steps of the process, there's going to be a lot of threads that go through, and you might hear us saying the same words over and over again, and I think that just shows that this isn't a, one stop, you do it and it sits on the shelf, but it's something that you're constantly looking at and reviewing. And we'll start with the education and training to prevent, avoid, stop imminent threats or acts of terrorism. So basically, people need to be trained, subs, custodians, aides, and I know that's not easy, and I know contracts, some contracts say they have to go to staff meetings, other contracts say if you want to train someone, you have to give them a 60-day notice or whatever their different contracts say, but that's, something you have to make time for. We train, in my current district, all of our substitute teachers. We did about 50 or 60 of them in January of last year. We have another one coming up for this year for any new subs or staff members that want to hear it again, and just be involved, and we do pay them for that. It is a paid day for them to come in and get our training, because it's important that, whether they're training in any of the schools in our district, that they know what the plan is, and then if they go to other districts and they're not trained at this, they would have some sort of a background. And you also need to be on the same page with your first responders. Communicating with them is so vital to their response and the response of, the staff in the building and students. So making sure that you're on the same page, and not that you're going to know exactly what they're going to do in an event, but as long as you have an idea and they know what maybe your actions are going to be during an event. So, in Ohio, they have in a couple weeks, schools have the option of arming staff members. Well, your first responders will need to know if you have an armed staff member on campus, because, no one wants the police to come in or first responders to come in, see someone with a weapon. Now we have a whole different scenario going. So make sure on the same page, make sure, all stakeholders involved in the school are trained on that.
So with the hardening of the schools, that is a controversial topic at times. I know that after our shooting, we were in the process of using funds from the Marjory Stoneman Douglas law here in the state of Florida to gate all and fence in all of our schools, and they had chosen to do a different school than ours first. And our community had a big problem with that. They felt like because we were the school that had the active shooter incident, we should be the first. And so voicing that to the district level did change, and we were the first. I did not realize that we were also going to have some controversial opinions about the aesthetic looks of the fencing and gating. And so when you begin to harden schools, the best advice I can get is look at what you are getting for your money and whether it is truly preventative and can truly be a proactive tool, or if it's a reactive tool. When you harden schools, you want to have a proactive tool, such as the gating. We all know that if someone wants to attack a school, they're going to climb that gate, but it will slow them down to allow more response time. Cameras. We all know that cameras are not going to stop behavior issues at school. I'm sure that we all have some cameras, and we still have students that make some bad choices and choose to behave. But what we do know is it's proactively providing a view of the entire school campus. Things such as blocking doors, all of those are reactive type of hardening tools. So again, as you are looking at what you're going to bring in your school, look at the cost compared to the effect. Obviously, something that will keep doors closed is amazing, but are your doors bulletproof? Because closing a door did not stop the shooter at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Looking at things such as windows in the doorway, and how are you going to handle that according to the guidelines for your district. There's a lot to consider there, and again, my best suggestion is look deeply, and not just you, but involve other stakeholders in that look at what is actually going to work proactively for your school first, and then look at your reactive tools. And Nicole, I see your question in the chat box, and I will be coming to that in just a few minutes.
Then when it comes to community engagement, Elizabeth talked about, aesthetics of the school, and I don't love the term hardening of schools, because that's not why we're in education. We don't certainly want it to look like a prison or make the students feel like they're in a jail-like setting. But that's also where community comes in. Involving the stakeholders. We have a fairly large safety committee. It includes staff members, teachers, administrators from all the different grade levels. We have district level administrators on there. We have first responders on there. We also have community members on there, and we'll talk a little bit more about who's involved in the larger committee and how that has helped us implement or not implement certain things. But again, it's getting people involved, and Nicole, with the buy-in, if things are coming sometimes from the safety group, which does include a larger group of people, then there's definitely more buy-in, especially when you have parents involved. And we could talk a little bit later on how to do that as well.
Well, Nicole, I love your question about school culture. How can you get staff buy-in into school culture as a preventative factor? And it seems like when you stand in front of a staff and you begin to put forth a school culture that you're hoping is going to promote a safe school atmosphere, the first thing that you start with is transparent communication. And so specifically with my staff, obviously coming in after the fact, there was that stigma that I was not on campus the day of the shooting, therefore I could not possibly understand what they were going through. And so I tried to promote a solid school culture by meeting with those teachers, and I'll talk later about also meeting with the student body, but meeting with teachers that were deeply invested in the rebuild and recovery process. And I really just listened. I listened to them in depth, in detail, and I took to heart their notes and what they gave to me. And I realized that what they really needed from me was continuous communication about school safety. They wanted to know. You may think as a school leader that it's a small situation that we've added 2 cameras in an upstairs hallway, but they wanted to know that. So coming forth with that communication, being transparent with them, and then of course in the state of Florida we have the see something, say something, do something. And we promote that within our staff, and they promote that with our students. Because the basic fact of the matter is I can stand up in front of a student body of 2,400 students, which is how big Forest was at that point in time, and I can promote that with them, but the people that see them every single day are the teachers in the classroom. So the way that I did that was promote it with the classroom teachers first, and our cafeteria workers and our custodians and everyone else that was going to be on our campus. And then they brought that message to the students so that the students felt comfortable and knew that they could go to any adult in the building to put forth that preventative measure. And so next we're going to come to protection, which is protect our citizens, residents, visitors, and assets against the greatest threats and hazards in a manner that allows our interests, aspirations, and way of life to thrive. And this is a huge, huge part of school safety. I'm going to discuss the mental health screenings and threat assessments, which is why I kind of pushed the MTSS, because I'm going to discuss that as well as just systems of support. So when you begin to talk about systems of support, that is multifaceted and multi-layered. And when you begin to talk about mental health screenings in the state of Florida, we have one that is used pretty much statewide, as well as a formatted threat assessment that is used statewide. But I know that in other states it is per district. And so what do you do whenever a student is in one district and has been part of the threat assessment piece, and that there was a founded threat with that student, and then they move to another district? How do you share that information? And that's where that systems of support comes in as well, because the communication between districts, the communication between school leadership and families, and the communication between school leadership and staff is imperative for protection. We are fortunate that our role has been allowed to take on a more proactive approach towards school safety. When I first started in this career, if we felt like a child had a behavior issue that was going to end up manifesting itself in a threatening situation, those were very few and far between conversations 30 years ago. Now it's an open conversation, it's an open topic, and it's a topic that provides resources and support. So the best thing that I can tell a school administrator when you're in the role of mental health screenings, threat assessments, and systems of support for protection matters is that you need to be heavily involved with that. Do not continuously push off your mental health screenings to just your guidance counselors or your school counselors. While they may be the ones that are trained to give the tool, talk to them and set a format where the immediate response to that tool is to engage you, and if you have an SRO, in that process from that point forward. They need to be communicating with you from the get-go. If they have a student that has come into their office and they feel that there is a need to run a threat assessment, or in our case, a BEST screening, which is our mental health screening, you should know that that's being done. You do not have to be in the room while it's being done, because for most children, they will not speak in front of you. They're more comfortable with their school counselor, but you need to be in the know. With your systems of support, do not forget that your role is to lead that. And while you may only be in the facilitator role of that, you are still the leader to make sure that those systems of support are available. So I know that a lot of times the systems of support, the mental health threat assessments, all of those types of tools are someone else's responsibility to necessarily implement, but it's your responsibility as the school leader to always have your thumb on the pulse of that heartbeat. Always be involved in that process, and always know those students that your guidance counselors, your school counselors, your teachers are kind of keeping a closer eye on, because either they've threatened self-harm or harm towards others. Make sure that you have that open line of communication there. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mike for drills and facility management.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So again, I talked about it before, and talked about it again, working with the first responders and students and staff to practice the drills, taking the time, to go through those actions, and even sometimes just talking through scenarios. Having first responders in your building, the first time they're in your building should not be the time that you need them or something's happening. We have our SRO, if there's a new guy or lady on the police force, he'll bring them in and walk them around and introduce them to people and just kind of show them the lay of the land. We invite our first responders to tornado drills, our fire drills, our lockdown drills. Let them walk around, let the students see them. I've been in 3rd grade through 12th grade in my career, and no matter the age, the kids like to see people walking through their building. And, depending on your school system, we have police officers, with kids in the building, so they'll know, they'll know the dad as they see them walking through. Our lieutenant in our fire department has kids in the district, so hey, Mr. Nelson and Lieutenant Nelson, are the same person to these kids, so that's great. But again, just having them know the building and people being comfortable with them, and also give staff. We've had some scenarios where, especially with tornado drills, the student population shifts throughout the day. So you might have a lot of students in the science wing, and then you have, quite a few students in the media center at a time. Well, depending on when that tornado drill is or the real event, it's going to depend on where the students go. So we noticed a large group, and media center said, hey, we can't fit all these kids where we're supposed to go. What should we do? So next time we had a drill, we had Lieutenant Nelson come, and he went upstairs and kind of watched it in action, and we talked through some of those scenarios. Same with the science wing, and obviously COVID brought a whole nother, mix into lockdown drills and tornado drills, putting a lot of kids in a little room. So having their input constantly, and again, it just opens up the lines of communication with the first responders and the staff in the building. As far as, entryways, I see there's some questions out there. People are putting vestibules and gates and protective film on windows and door stops. You'll hear this over and over again. Safety, there's not one fix to school safety. It's definitely a layered approach. It's something, that you just got to keep working at and changing. So making sure that you have those different layers in mind and having that culture of see something, say something, do something, advertise it, talk about it. And, I think what the kids need to know, or even parents, is that when something goes to the see something, say something, we get emails pretty immediately as to the reports. So acting on those reports and talking to the students, if they are completely anonymous, I know if we need more information, we can go back to the See Something, Say Something company, and they can contact the people that called in and said, hey, thank you for this. Here's the response from the school. Sometimes they will put names in, like, yeah, come talk to me, or we're going to send, pictures with this to the administrator's email, and then getting back to them creates that culture of, okay, if I do say something, something is going to be done. They're that do something piece. And, part of the school culture of, having people, accept or follow those safety rules is sometimes explaining why you're doing something or why something's in place. Again, at the high school level now, the kids get it. They know what things are happening out there. So, when we're saying, hey, you can't prop doors open, you can't put your hair tie in the door, you can't shove a rock in the door. I think we've seen hair ties, rocks, you name it. We've probably seen it holding a door open. And that goes for teachers too sometimes. And just saying, hey, this school had an unlocked door and this is what happened. Different things happen. I know when I taught in Las Vegas, we had a little more open campus, kind of like some of the warmer climate schools have. And, the campuses, the news crews were trying to get on some of the campuses. And our principal said, like, if I see our school on the evening news, it's not going to be fun next morning. We have to make sure that we're keeping our schools safe and, having the conversations, sometimes hard conversations with the stakeholders, shows them why you're doing things, and you're also getting input on how we can do things better when the conversations are open.
So moving to mitigation, Mike's going to talk a few minutes about solid school safety plan that has been shared and practiced, and then I'm going to finish up with the last 2 points on this slide. And just so you know, the question about involving police officers from the charter school point of view, I believe that's by Brooke. Brooke, I'm coming to that because I went from public school now to charter school, and I feel you. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Go ahead, Mike.
All right, thank you. I had to get a sip of coffee. I talk a lot sometimes, so sorry about that. So again, the solid safety plan, being shared and practiced, and that's hard to do, and it takes time. But practicing with the staff, practicing with the students. No one wants to practice during lunch periods. No one wants to practice maybe during recess or during some of the larger PE or choir times. But we have to, talk to the kids about it, say maybe you're lengthening a period a day or two. Also going to the evacuation sites. We, every 3 years we're supposed to do in the state of Ohio, a larger type drill. Actually going to the evacuation sites, having the students and teachers take attendance outside, and then actually relocating to the off-site evacuation reunification site. Maybe try reunifying with parents. Maybe it's a day where the whole school, we have 1,500 kids, so maybe that's not a day to practice, but set up a time where maybe seniors are gone or there's less kids in the school building, and have the freshmen all picked up. Try that sign-up procedures. It's the only way you're going to know if it works or not is if you try it. And again, you don't want to be trying to reunify 1,500 kids for the first time when there's a tragedy happening and your school is being taken over by law enforcement and SWAT. Again, like I talked a little bit earlier, walking through things with first responders, even blocking a doorway. We tell our students we may block a doorway during a fire drill. Okay, so now what do? You know, we tell them first get out of the building. That's always your first priority, you know, if there's a fire evacuation, because you're always learning from different events, and you know, you just want them to practice not the same. Okay, I'm in first period. We always have fire drills first period on nice days in January, so there's going to be one today. You know, just doing things differently and thinking about them and walking through them will help solidify that safety plan. And yes, we can do and play the what if game. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? But if, you know, I try to entrust my staff with, you know, I know that you'll do the best thing, make the best decision for our students at the time with the information you have at the time. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth for school culture.
So school culture during mitigation, learn from others, specifically the Principal Recovery Network. I'm not sure that there's another group of principals out there that are comprised simply of principals that have been through this. And between all of the charter members, we have been through it at every school level, and we have been through every type of situation that you probably would have questions about, including murder-suicide, an administrator being injured during the situation, mass fatalities such as Columbine, Sandy Hook, and Marjorie Stoneman, school shootings without fatalities. We have unfortunately run the gamut of all of those types of situations, and we are always open to work with principals and support principals. In fact, that is our main function, is to support principals and answer principals' questions to help them through any type of situation. It doesn't have to just be an active shooter, but any situation of trauma, because we have found that trauma has no timeline and it is not absolutely specific to the particular situation. So learn from your other colleagues as well as learn from other events. There's plenty of material that you can read online about how each of us personally have responded to different situations, and then there, of course, is our guide, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the webinar. So I want to come back to the question about entrenching first responders in all aspects of the school safety plan. And the best advice I can give, and understand again, Brooke, this comes from me going from a public school that had 2 SROs, and our sheriff was on our campus every single day for the first couple of months after we returned after the shooting. And then our campus is also kind of the flagship campus, so anytime the police want to do anything, they were right there. And now I'm in a charter school where we do not have SROs. And so what I can say, and this, I'm just going to say it straightforward, is stay in their face. Do not let them forget that you are there. Invite them into your school. Feed them, because police officers do come for food. Build those relationships. Don't give them an option. I know this sounds kind of odd to say, but don't give them an option of not having a relationship with you. You are entrusted with the lives of children in your school building just like any other school district is. And even though you're a charter school or an independent school district, you are still entrusting lives. You're still having lives entrusted to you every single day. And first responders' only job is to protect human life. And so even if you have to have a conversation from that point of view that, you know, we are constituents in your jurisdiction and your job is to help me protect these lives, and we need to be more involved together. I mean, obviously do it in a very professional, inviting, and warm way, but don't let up. The minute that I walked into the charter school system, within 2 days I had a meeting with our deputy, one of our deputy sheriffs, and had them to the table and just sat through it. And I asked them for help because I did not want them to feel like, hey, I'm just kind of busting you about not being involved with our school. I truly need you. I need you to come into the school. I need for you to help me. Our safety plan is old and outdated. I need for you to help me put this together because I'm going from the principal point of view. I need the law enforcement point of view. So when you bring them to the table, A, feed them, and B, need them. And that's the way that I feel about building relationships with first responders. They always need to be honored. They do a very, very tough job, and so bringing them in for some type of celebration is always positive, and then letting them know that you truly, truly need them in that piece.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Now we move to response.
So responding quickly to save lives, protect property, the environment, meet basic human needs in the aftermath of a catastrophic incident. Reunification and communication are vital. You will have, if you're in a school setting and there is an incident, you are going to have adults' most precious thing in your building, and that's their kids. And all they want is their kid back, and they want their kid back healthy and happy. And so the reunification and communication is so vital to this process. I talked a little bit earlier on practicing going through the, going to the reunification sites, going through the process, trying out the traffic patterns. Again, depending on the situation, your traffic pattern that you plan might be changed based on the staging of law enforcement. We kind of had a plan, and that changed a little bit when they started shutting streets down once the shooter left the building and was on the loose for a little bit. So you have to go back. How are you communicating? How are students being signed out with their parents? Are you doing it electronically? Are you doing it on paper? If it's paper, what happens if they're leaving through this building or that building? Excuse me. We had students leave the high school and they actually ran to the middle school. Now we have high school kids in the middle school, and the middle school is asking, why do we have high school kids here? Because at the time they didn't know what was happening quite yet. So the constant communication with staff and families is critical to make that quick and constant. And you need to determine how that works for your setting. How do you get your weekly newsletters out to staff? How do you get your news updates out to students or to their families? I know at the high school, we send updates to the students and their parents. At the elementary level, the kids didn't care when picture day was until that morning, and they didn't want to dress up for school that day, or, so you have to determine how that's done. And, the mindset used to be, especially for schools, have the whole story, have the whole picture before you share. Make sure your district, has that whole story done before any information is out there. And social media completely changed that. I'm sure my high school friends out there hate social media as much as I do and love it at the same time. But, get the information out there because your kids are, and they are communicating, and they're snapping or Instagramming, is that a verb? I don't know. Posting on Instagram, and they're tweeting and doing all that kind of stuff faster than schools are. So, if you're in a lockdown because there is an incident, get it out there. I was kind of in charge of the communication side of the staff in 2012 when our incident happened, and that was before all these other social media platforms were out there. But I was constantly sending emails to the staff, letting them know what was happening, and again, just keeping them updated where things were happening, what was happening, because at some point SWAT was coming to their room to clear their room and to get the kids to a reunification site. So I want to be the one to tell them that before someone banged on their door, in SWAT gear. So having that out, and this just worked for us, encouraging your students and staff to send those texts and emails to their family. Again, We have 1,500 students in my building now. We had 1,100 at Chardon, and the students getting the text, hey, I'm in this classroom, I'm safe, we're in lockdown. That calms the parents down. At one point, our administrator, our principal had to say, hey, you guys, and me and the other assistant principal, you need to call your families. Yes, absolutely the hardest call I ever had to make to my wife, but I had to let her know that I was okay. Again, texting and things were jammed up and cell phones, but getting that out there, making sure that the communication between the kids and their families was very important. Elizabeth?
So on the level of the media, and I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because I know that we're running out of time. The media, hopefully, my hope for you is that your district has employed a public relations director that will take all media over with law enforcement and probably your superintendent. However, that is not always the case. So if you as the principal are ever dealing with the media, my first and foremost piece of advice, and I fortunately did not learn this by trial and error because my teachers were very transparent with me about this, you do not ever mention the shooter by name. It is offensive to the victims' families, and it is traumatizing to those that were there that day. Mainstream media will do that for you. I'm sure that you have noticed, and Uvalde is a perfect example of this. Long before we knew the wonderful background stories of the victims, we knew the background of the shooter. And so that is not your job. Leave that to mainstream media. Your job, if you are in front of the media, is to simply give information. And I would highly suggest that if you have to go in front of the media on the day of or quickly thereafter, you practice a statement and do not take questions. If the media wants to ask questions, hopefully your sheriff's department or your local law enforcement agency will answer those, or somebody from the district level. For a principal, your main concern, or for a school leader, your main concern is taking care of your school community at that point in time. So it is very acceptable to just give a statement and make sure that you include in that statement, obviously, any pertinent information that you want to get out. And then you exit stage left. Do not take questions in the moment, because even though you may not understand this in that moment, you have also been traumatized. And what you will say will last forever in media world, and you do not want to be speaking and answering questions cold off the cuff while you are also dealing with the trauma. However, again, best practices, you're never in front of the camera during that time, during the response time. Once you are in the recovery time, there may be media outlets that want to come in and do, a year after the fact what's happening. It's perfectly normal for that to go on. And whenever, if you feel comfortable, be a part of that. But hopefully on the day of, you don't have to stand in front of the camera. But if you do, a statement, no questions, don't say the shooter's name. The last piece is immediate support of the community. And Mike, we're running pretty low on time, but if you want to address that pretty quickly.
Yeah, so in the Guide to Recovery, which I believe there's a link in here, I actually addressed that. It's one of the sections in the Guide to Recovery, but it's also, I did a little blurb in there on just having a relationship with your local mental health providers. Be ready to call them in. People are going to reach out. They're going to want to donate food and supplies and things. People are going to want to help. Even within the schools, we had teachers like, what can I do? Hey, can you start making a list of all the people that want to do stuff? And then throughout the years, which is what I'm going to talk about next, actually, so we could probably turn that page, is the timeline for recovery. There is no timeline. It is ongoing. So things are going to come up when other incidences occur. Ours was in February of 2012, later in 2012 with Sandy Hook. We had teachers come down to the office, I'm going home and getting my kids out of elementary school. See you later, we're covering their class. So that timeline's really never going to end. Being trauma trained, and again, people might say, hey, what can we do? Hey, remember when you said that you would, donate lunch or breakfast for our students and staff? We'd love to do that now. And just bring that in when you need. You'll learn in trauma training that students and teachers both went through the trauma, so they're going to go through the same ebbs and flows of trauma recovery. So your AP multivariable calculus student may come in one day and not be able to do algebra because he heard the song that morning that he heard the morning of the shooting. Well, that might be true of a teacher. That teacher might come in one day and be like, man, my head's just not in it. I couldn't teach algebra. And so you just have to be mindful that that timeline is forever. Elizabeth, do you want to touch on commemorations?
Yeah, so with commemorations, the way that that's going to look, this is the one area of the traumatic situation that is pretty dependent on whether you've had fatalities or not. At my school, we did not have a fatality, so our commemoration looked a little different. We did a Community Gives Back Day where we went back to our reunification site and our students led a 45-minute celebration of resilience where they spoke, and there was a cool video that they did of all the cool stuff that we had done since that day. And then we split into our 40-something different clubs, and every single club had a community service project for 3 hours that morning. And we're a small town, so we kind of inundated the town. We were everywhere in our T-shirts and all of that. And then we all returned back to the reunification spot and did a big pep rally. That would have been inappropriate if we had had fatalities. The victims' families would have thought that that was too frivolous. And so you really need to take into account what your stakeholders say. And I'm going to go ahead and cover the staff needs versus student needs and voice in this moment because this is where my experience falls with that. Look at your leadership philosophy and think of yourself as a school leader. Who do you serve first in your building? And who we serve first is our students. We serve our students. We support our teachers and students, but we serve our students. And so when it was time, and I'm just going to kind of bleed these two together for time's sake, when it was time for us to put together our commemoration, and even the very first day I took over the school, the first group that I met with was our Student Government Association. And I sat very, very quietly and listened to them that first day and kind of got their ideas of what they wanted the school culture to be about. And then I met with them regularly, and I'm talking weekly during the school year, because you as a school leader, you think that there is one school culture. The teachers think that there is another one. The people that really know what your school culture is sitting in your classrooms as students. And especially at the high school level, they'll tell you, this is what your school culture is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. They will tell you. And so they truly know your school culture. And as we began to come up on the anniversary, unfortunately, and be prepared for this, our anniversary or the year after, it's kind of hard to call it an anniversary, but that's what it's referred to as, is the same as Columbine. So there was a lot of media coverage. And the moment that the two clicked, that our shooting happened the same day as Columbine, just 19 years later, they began to combine us into that media situation too. And so I went to the student body and said, what do you want to do? And this is where student voice is very important. As is staff voice. What are you going to feel comfortable with? And that's how we planned that day. And unfortunately for us, it was on a Saturday. We barred media from everything that was in-house. So any of our pieces that were inside, we reunified at a church that was inside the church. There was no media allowed so that kids could just be themselves, et cetera, and so on. We did not invite parents. Had we had fatalities, that would have been different. We invited very few dignitaries to that particular piece, but we did invite the media and the dignitaries and our parents to volunteer with us for our community service projects. So be very, very mindful of having your voice heard as well. We have talked quite a bit this past week about the Columbine Memorial and different things like that, the Sandy Hook Memorial, which is probably opening soon. And with all of those situations, Columbine's Memorial did not open for 8 years after the fact. And I will tell you, having been in the school and having been with Frank DeAngelis and having been to the memorial, they did it right. And it took that long to allow the parents to grieve and come to a realization that this is how their child was going to be seen by the rest of the world for the rest of their lives. And this is how they wanted that to look. Other schools have rushed into opening memorials very quickly to make sure that that's out there and that the child is, remembered, and they haven't been done quite as well. There's been controversy and there's been upset and has added to the grief process. So when you begin to think about staff needs, student needs, and commemoration, they kind of all go together. Sit back, listen, but remember, your job is to serve students first.
Wow, thank you so much, Elizabeth and Michael. We really appreciate all of the great insights that you shared. We are going to quickly walk through the role of administrators in supporting that six-step planning process outlined in the school guide. As mentioned earlier, the most comprehensive and effective school EOP is developed by that multidisciplinary planning team. And most administrators are familiar with the process of collaboration in providing academic and mental and behavioral health support services to students. So they are really critical leaders and often responsible for organizing those multidisciplinary threat teams, which includes personnel such as principals, teachers, school employees, behavioral health professionals, curriculum professionals, SROs, and other staff members who are skilled in data collection and analysis. So the school administrator was going to play a critical role in step one of that planning process as the core team is identified. And then in step two in the process, the planning team is identifying those hazards and threats unique to the school community and then prioritizing them. And so that might include active shooter events, but also so many other threat and hazard types that schools might face, natural hazards, biological hazards, technological hazards as well. And assessments are important sources of information, and they might include culture and climate assessments, capacity assessments to look at some of the gaps and resources that may exist within the school or the school district, behavioral threat assessments that help administrators partner in collaboration with their community partners and other individuals within the school building, and also site assessments. And in thinking about site assessments, administrators can really take a lead role in ensuring that community partners are a part of that site assessment team and support efforts to conduct walkthroughs of the building or campus as a team. And, they may play a critical role in the development and or the efforts to administer any of those assessment types. In step three, the team is deciding which threats and hazards will be addressed in the EOP and then developing goals and objectives for each. And we've provided some sample goals on the screen that align with those before, during, and after phases of an emergency. And so school administrators really will play a critical role in participating in the development of those goals and objectives. And they will need to be developed for the functions. So, thinking about communications and warning, communication, family reunification, evacuation, as well as those threats and hazards. And thinking about moving on to step four, looking at the planning team, taking the time to build upon those goals and objectives created and assigning actual courses of action that address the who, the what, and the how for achieving them together. And this will include the roles and responsibilities of school administrators in responding to a variety of threat and hazard types and in activating various emergency functions. And then in step five, the administrators will really take time to look at those partners that they will rely on and develop the plan, develop those memoranda of understanding, and really look at all of the resources that will need to be shared with partners as well as with stakeholders who may need to approve portions of the plan as well. And then, of course, in step six, training stakeholders, conducting exercises, updating the plan, and as members of the core planning team, school administrators will be able to contribute to those revisions and maintenance efforts around the EOP after an event and or after an exercise. As Michael mentioned, if you're practicing some of those functions, such as family reunification. This is really how the planning team closes the loop and ensures that the plan evolves to meet the needs of the school community. As we mentioned before, we will be hopping on our community of practice in about a minute or two to continue to answer any additional questions that you might have about this topic. We do want to take a quick moment to remind you that we have uploaded quite a few resources to support your efforts, including a variety of new fact sheets that the RMCA Center has developed, including one on collaborating with K-12 school administrators, as well as looking at rural schools, whole community engagement planning. We have our new online course on developing MOUs as well. We also have featured our Building Blocks of School Safety, which provides a great toolkit for use by K-12 schools and districts in developing EOPs, and we offer a lot of the resources that we've created to support that process there as well. I'm going to turn things back to Michael and Elizabeth for a moment just to provide details on the new Principal Recovery Network Guide to Recovery.
Thank you. So really the way this group got together was, in 2012 after our shooting, Frank DeAngelis from Columbine reached out to our school and was just an invaluable resource to me and to our admin team and to our students. And after that, we started reaching out to other principals after their events. What can we do to help? Hey, we have this letter, do you want to use it? Things like that, making those connections. Then we realized, hey, there's a lot of us doing that. So the NASSP got us all together, and we started just kind of collecting our thoughts and put it into this little manuscript. It again, like Elizabeth said earlier, it's everywhere from Sandy Hook, Columbine, Stoneman Douglas, fatalities, no fatalities, and just what worked for us. So there's different sections on securing and supporting, reopening school, ongoing needs of students and staff, commemorations and remembrances, and, again, really strongly serve our students. So listening to that student voice and making sure that we're doing what they need and what they're comfortable with because it's their school. Elizabeth?
So some of the upcoming events for the Principal Recovery Network. We just released this guide this past Monday from the Columbine Memorial. We were together as an entire group, which we try to do at least once, if not twice a year. And one of the pieces that we were talking about is, while this is our version 1.0, there will be amended and edited versions coming out. I'm positive of it as we begin to learn more things. At all times, we have members continuously speaking to the media on our behalf to try to get our message out there. We also attend the NASSP Advocacy Days in Washington, D.C., and go as a group to the Capitol to talk to our lawmakers about funding for school safety and school safety laws, trying to keep them in touch with what it is as far as a reality for us, as well as we travel to different schools to support. I know the Sandy Hook principal travels quite often just to be boots on the ground with schools that have gone through this, as well as some of our other members. Obviously, Frank DeAngelis is very well known through the school safety community and travels quite a bit. Speaking of that, we have quite a few partnerships with other school safety entities as well, and sometimes we'll go and present at conferences for them, or at least be via Zoom to assist with them. But our main purpose is to help you, the school leader. And so if you go to our website, which is very easy to find, you can literally just Google Principal Recovery Network. You will see the biographies of all of our charter members on there. And if you read those, you will probably find someone that has been through something that is indicative of what you are feeling. And I'm obviously hoping you never go through an active shooter incident, but a death of a student, a death of a staff member, and things like that. You can always reach out to us. We are on email continuously. We text, we call, whatever we need. It is our mission and our vision, but more than that, it's our calling to support school leaders. We don't want to have gone through this in vain and not help others that might need our assistance in whatever area.
Thank you so much, Michael and Elizabeth, for your participation today. Thank you to all of our participants who are still tuned in. We also want to remind you that the RMCA Center, we are another resource. We are only an email or a phone call away Please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any technical assistance requests on any aspect of emergency management planning. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, for submitting your questions and engaging with us throughout the event. The MCA Center appreciates your participation and hopes to see you again at another webinar in our series or to hear from you in the future. Thank you again, Michael and Elizabeth, for your expertise and all that you do to support school safety in your localities and states. Just a reminder, everyone, we will now be heading over to the community of practice to continue answering any questions that you may have via our post-webinar web chat. Thanks to all.